So my lesson plan was over the volume of rectangular prisms. This is a sixth grade math standard. After students' thinking was activated using some guiding questions, students navigated to Delta Math, which is an online math software that asks or that has different topics that students can work through as examples, or teachers can assign to students and get their feedback from students submitted so they can see students' understanding of the content. In this lesson plan, students went to Delta Math and went to volume of a rectangular prism visually, and students would answer the series of questions for the problems by visually seeing the representation of volume. For example, here they would press play and it would show them the cubes in the rectangular prism. The question guides them how many cubes are currently in the prism. Students can see that there are 4 cubes and they can submit their answer. They would continue playing until the entire rectangular prism was filled. So here there are now going to be 12 cubes. And then once it is all the way filled up, students can see that they could either count all the cubes to see it visually, or they could make that connection of it length times width times height, which would give you 60. Students would check their answers, and then before submitting, and then it would tell them if they got it correct or not. And students would answer a couple of these questions before moving on, and their feedback would be submitted for me to view. Once they finished with the Delta Math examples visually, they would navigate to some practice problems. Here they would go to AAAmath.com, and very similar to DeltaMath.com, there's tons of grade levels, tons of resources for math. You can see on the side here, there's just anything you could think of. They're going to have some practice problems. What's great about AAAmath.com too is their practice can be determined by however they want to practice. They can do a countdown method where they just do 60 seconds to see how many they can get correct in that time frame. They can get extra time for each answer they answer correctly, or they can just do 20 questions. And so they would come up here and they would see, first off, they would tell them the formula right here for volume of a rectangular prism, which is what they just worked through in the Delta Math. And then they would see that their length is 8, their width is 1, and their height is 7. So they would use the formula to check their answers, and it would show them how many they've gotten correct or incorrect and their percentage. So, and then they can report their totals to me by entering my email. After they've practiced, they would go to Flipgrid, and this can be done on a phone or a tablet that they would have access to in class. And they would just record a summary over volume explaining how to find the volume of a rectangular prism and why the formula works for finding volume. Why does the volume equal the length times the width times the height? Once they have that video recorded, they would submit it in the corresponding Dropbox in Google Classroom. So that's where they would put it for me to view, or if other students are struggling to understand volume, they can refer to this resource and to watch other peers' explanation of volume and why it works. Once they've submitted that, they would get into an assigned group and they would create a presentation in Google Slides over volume in the real world. And they would have a rubric and a checklist to kind of go along with this presentation, making sure they hit all the key points of explaining what volume is, 3 examples of volume used by professionals and how it is used, an example of volume used in everyday life or day-to-day, and then they would create their own scenario for finding volume with fractional edge links for their peers to answer. And then they would also submit this presentation in the corresponding Dropbox in Google Classroom, and this is where they would view each other's presentations. And then Once they have all submitted, students will go through each presentation and answer the real world scenario problem that was created and turn those answers into the basket in class as they leave. Some of the issues that I did encounter during this lesson is timing, because it's very self-paced for students. They were all finishing at different times, so someone might finish the Delta Math, do the practice, submit their summary video, and they would be ready for the presentation, but maybe their group members that they were assigned to were not ready for their presentation. And because I did mixed ability grouping, this was very evident because my lower level students needed a little bit more time than my advanced students. So here I was able to kind of extend or enrich my advanced students before kind of moving on. I had them explore the formula for triangular prisms to see if they can come up with it on their own. And then I was able to kind of work in small groups with my lower level students to get them to the same pace, to get them to the presentation so they could work through that. Another strategy that I think would help improve this challenge is by kind of pacing students more throughout the class, giving them like, all right, it's been 5 minutes. You need to have moved on from drafting what your video is going to be to creating your video, and strategies like that.